Dave Canales is the new head coach for the Carolina Panthers. I have a lot of thoughts about this move, more than I expected when I started writing this script. I actually shot this video already, had to reshoot it because the audio corrupted, so hopefully this one gets through on full production. Let's talk a little bit about him. He is in his early 40s, another one of these on the younger side head coaching hires. Really, most of the head coaching hires in this cycle were on the younger side, which I think is a good trend for NFL teams to hire younger coaches. It feels like they connect easier with players, especially because players tend to be on the younger side in the NFL. And another offensive-minded guy. Let's go through his resume. I think his resume is one of the more interesting ones of the hires. So from what I can tell, his professional experience starts with my personal team, the Seattle Seahawks. He was a coach there from 2010 to 2022. Not a ton of specific notes on his time there before 2022. I bring it up because those 12 years of experience were during a particularly successful time for the Seahawks. Won a Super Bowl, made it back to the Super Bowl, had multiple playoff runs. Obviously, Russell Wilson had a pretty fantastic offensive output in those years, particularly in the beginning of the latter half of his time as a Seattle Seahawk. And Canales being a part of the coaching staff, I think, is a big plus and the reason why he was able to stay around for so long. 2022 was where I think his journey into truly becoming a head coaching candidate began, because obviously at that point the Russell Wilson era ended in Seattle. They had to move on, and expectations for what the team could do playoff-wise went down the toilet. He was given Geno Smith, who had been there for a few years. He had developed a rapport with him to that point. In fact, when he got hired by the Panthers, Geno Smith commented about the way that Canales connected with him and how he liked him off the bat when he first came to Seattle. So that's a pretty good sign in terms of the way that he will hopefully be able to connect to his new team down in Carolina. And then when he had Geno Smith in 2022, I mean, the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Fourth-ranked offense in passing touchdowns. They had 30 of those. Didn't throw too many picks. And, I mean, they made the playoffs. In 2022, if you would have gone back to the week before the season started, I bet you it was less than a 5% chance that people were giving the Seahawks to make the playoffs. Granted, they got lucky with some of the way the chips fell in the latter half of the season, but you have to put yourself in the position to win there. And a large part of the reason that they made the playoffs was because of Geno Smith's impressive QB play. And a lot of that credit goes to Dave Canales as the quarterback coach for Geno during that season. That turned into him moving on to Tampa Bay last year and becoming their offensive coordinator, not just the quarterback's coach. He clearly carried some of that quarterback whispering guru-ship between Russell Wilson and getting the best out of Geno Smith, and took that into Tampa because Baker Mayfield, following a year where he played for, ironically, the Carolina Panthers and did not do so well, and was on somewhat of a skid from his start of his NFL career as a number one overall pick, he got the best out of Baker. Baker had a pretty great season. That offense in Tampa, 6th ranked in turnovers lost, so they didn't turn the ball over. They were top 10 in passing touchdowns, and they didn't throw a lot of picks. And once again, a team that didn't have very high expectations of making the playoffs ended up making the playoffs and even contending relatively admirably with the Lions before things got out of hand at the end of the game. And Baker played a pretty great season and earned himself probably another contract in Tampa Bay. So I think from the Panthers side, what I see this hire as is this guy can get the best out of quarterbacks. We drafted Bryce Young. We passed on C.J. Stroud. That appears to, at this point, be a pretty massive mistake. We won't know the severity of that mistake until we get somebody in here that we trust can properly evaluate and get the best out of this quarterback. If Bryce Young has the talent that they can develop, I believe that Canales will be able to show that. I don't know if he is a set long-term coach for, a dynasty run or anything like that. But I think that he can get the best out of Bryce Young that there possibly can be. And maybe the best that he can do is not that great. But because he got the best out of Russell Wilson, he got the best out of Geno Smith, he got the best out of Baker Mayfield, that gives you confidence as a team that, okay, at the very least, we can see what we have here in Bryce Young. If it's good, we can carry that forward and maybe Canales can remain our head coach. And if not, we can try to saddle him with a different quarterback in a future draft, make up for our mistake, but at least we can cut bait now. Because the last thing that you want with Bryce Young is to kind of give him coach after coach after coach, give him no stability, nobody that really connects with quarterbacks, and then you have no idea if what you have is good or not. That would be the worst case scenario if you're Carolina. Now, there are some things that we got to talk about with the job that are outside of the lines. You have a pretty bad ownership situation. We all saw the video of Tepper losing his temper last season. And just in general, this franchise has been through some rocky waters in the last few years. Basically, ever since Cam left, they have consistently struggled to put together proper personnel. They had to trade away Christian McCaffrey, and they have pieces. They have good guys, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, they haven't been able to really do anything for the last half decade or so. This is a tough job. That's what I want to acknowledge. I think that we need to be conscious of what success looks like at different franchises for different coaches. So Jim Harbaugh's level to clear for success in LA is probably higher than what success would look like for Dave Canales in Carolina. And that's contextually given ownership, pieces around you, division, opponents. Carolina is in a rough spot. There's not really any way to sugarcoat it. I don't think this is a coaching hire that's going to be a turnaround in the same way that DeMeco Ryans was for the Houston Texans. But the bottom line is the Panthers had to do something, and they're trying their best. I think this is a good hire for what they need. The goal of this season should not have anything to do with record. It honestly should just be evaluating talent on the roster. What can they do? Do they have the quarterback? If not, start looking down the pike. Who's coming in the draft? Do we have to trade up? What do we do here? And I think Canales is a solid offensive mind that can give them the proper answer to that question. And honestly, there might be some question on if Canales is even really qualified to be a head coach at this point, especially with the jobs that were available in this cycle. Seattle, the Chargers, even a job like Atlanta, I think, is a lot more enticing because you have a much more sure set of players and personnel, and you know your draft position is better because Carolina's draft position is god-awful right now because of decisions made by the last regime. So Canales has a really tough job cut out for himself. But given the circumstances, I honestly really, really like this hiring. I don't know how much success it's going to bring in terms of wins or losses, but from a pure what do we need and who can help us get there perspective, I think this is a good hire. That being said, that's all I got to say on the matter for right now. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Like the video, please, if you liked it. If you're here, you listened to me ramble for long enough, you could at least throw a like. And if you want to hear more, because I'm talking about all the head coaches, go ahead and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. At the very end, we are going to do an all-encompassing video where we talk about my favorite hire, my least favorite hire. We're going to rank them. We're going to give them some grades, all that kind of stuff. And there's going to be plenty of sports content on this channel in the days and months to come. I really appreciate you. My name is Brian. This is B-Dave. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time, hopefully. And if not, thanks for stopping by.